Hey, book besties. Welcome to More Than a Book Club podcast. I'm your host, Leyna.
And I'm your other host, LJ.
And today we have the wonderful author, Susan Fletcher. She has her new book out, Sea Change. We're so excited to have you here on the podcast, Susan.
I am delighted to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
I haven't read a retelling of Little Mermaid, which is what this book is in essence. It's a fun modern day retelling.
An upgraded retelling.
Yes. How did this idea come to be? Like, how did this come to fruition for you?
For decades have been collecting stories about flooded villages, cities, communities. I don't know why. I think maybe the first one I heard was when I was researching my dragon books, which are set in my idea of medieval Wales. And I encountered a story about a drowned Welsh village that if you go to this lake on a certain kind of a day and everything is really quiet, you can hear the church bells ring. So I really love that.
That's
And
eerie.
so Atlantis and these stories of archaeologists finding flooded ancient cities, a 3,000-year-old castle, and then the modern cities that are flooded for hydroelectric dam projects and stuff like that. And I was just collecting these things and I knew I wanted to do something with them, but I just didn't know what. So sometimes I need like one idea to collide with another idea before I have a book. And so the collision happened decades later after my daughter had all grown up and she had a PhD in engineering and microbiology. And
Ooh.
she told me that I should watch out for the field of genetics. She said stuff you wouldn't believe what's going on in the field of genetics. And so I started reading about genetics and I read sort of general things about genetics and then checking the news feed, and pretty soon CRISPR started coming up there, the gene editing technique. And I started thinking about, wow, reading about that like at some point we could change the species. We could change our species so dramatically that we were no longer. I'm like, wait a minute. Underwater cities changing species. That's the Little Mermaid. So I thought, let's do that. Let's set that sometime in the future. And so that's what got me going on it.
I think
I love
it's so
that.
cool to think about. I've read the author's note at the end where you're talking about CRISPR, and I think I'd heard about it, but I didn't really know what it was.
Yeah.
Can you offer an explanation? Because I was like, I don't know if I could offer a good explanation.
I'm not a scientist, so I'm doing the best I can with this. But there's a way of editing, like you can edit a certain gene. So if there's a certain gene that causes a certain problem, like for instance, what they've been working on is a sickle cell disease, and apparently it's a single gene. They can like fix it. Now, don't ask me how they fix it. I don't know, but they can fix that. And so one of the exciting things about writing this book, which took me forever, was that as I was writing it, stuff was happening with CRISPR. So they figured out how to fix sickle cell disease. There's certain cancers that they can fix. There's a certain kind of blindness, and it all has to do at this point with if it's like a one gene affects it, they can fix that gene. And while I was writing this book, also the two people who came up with this, two women scientists, Jennifer Doudna and I can't remember her first name and I can't pronounce her second name, is Sharp. She's French. But anyway, they got the Nobel Prize for this.
Oh, wow.
And then more and more cures, that they're working on. But right now, it's prohibitively expensive to do it, but it won't be forever. And then with COVID, that's how they developed the vaccines. The two of the vaccines was using this technology. Not that our genes have been changed if we have
Right.
the vaccines at all, but they used those to come up with the vaccines really fast. So now I'm writing away. First of all, I started thinking like, wow, in the distant future, these crazy things are going to be happening. And by the time I'm done with the book, I have got a CRISPR developed vaccine running in my veins.
Isn't that crazy?
That's cool.
Crazy. Yeah. So anyway, that was really exciting. And another thing that happened while I was writing is that when I started writing, I had a hard time making sure that I understood enough about the science to be able to write the book. But as I was writing it, 3 books for general audiences came out on this very subject. And one of them is co-written by one of the women who got the Nobel Prize. So I could read that and like I can understand those books and I can understand, like how far could this go? And I could also understand what are people who really understand this, what are they worried about? So those 3 books made me feel a lot more confident about this crazy idea that I had.
And I had looked up some articles because after I read the author's note, I was like, okay, I need to go research some of this. And I'd seen the sickle cell thing where they basically said that instead of having multiple medications that you would take, you would have one medication and that would be it. And then you would be essentially cured. And
Yeah.
I was like, man, that's so awesome. I mean, I have epilepsy. LJ has type 1 diabetes. And so
Mhm.
it's one of those things. It's like, man, if we could prevent LJ
Yeah.
from ever having to inject insulin
Or
again,
have
or
like with
fix your
diabetes,
pancreas.
right? Or like even just prevent future generations.
Mhm.
Like we didn't know it was in my family because my dad is much older than his sisters, and I was the first grandchild. So they didn't start having kids until I was in high school. And so then they started having kids. And so I'm the only daughter of my dad. I have 2 brothers. Then the other 2 each had boys first and then girls second. And I had been diagnosed at 5. When the next one in line, the next girl turned 4, she was diagnosed. And then the youngest one was diagnosed at like 8. And so we know it clearly runs in my family,
Right.
but it's only the girls. None of the boys have it. And my children thus far, neither of them have it. And I know it typically skips generations, but 2 generations ago, if children died when they were young, they might not have known that it was
What the cause
diabetes. So
was.
maybe it has been, but I would love it if we could eradicate that. I'm a very fortunate type 1 diabetic that mine's not brittle. It's easy to manage, but there are I have so many friends that have had transplants and, have horrible vision or have gone blind, just doing everything they can. So I love this idea. I love that in the book that they've no more type 1 diabetes. Let's go.
This is a possibility. And again, I don't know specifically about diabetes and how many genes are involved and stuff, but I mean, this is going fast too. I mean, right now we're all taken up with AI, which is going really, really scarily fast.
It
This
is.
is going fast too, and it's really exciting. But like every technology, starting with fire or probably before fire, there's so much good that can come out of them, but there's a scary side also. And so that's what some of the scientists who are, really excited about the transformation in human health that could happen because of this. But they're also concerned about our going too fast and doing things. And also, who gets to decide what the limits are? Who gets to
Right.
decide, like if I have brown eyes, what if I want blue eyes? Who gets to decide if that's an okay thing for us to do,
Yeah.
I don't know.
It was a fascinating read in that regard, just trying
Yeah.
to, like, would I do this? Because the main character, Turtle, she has been genetically modified before she was born. So she had no say in this.
Right, right.
And she's been thrust into this world where she is a person now. That's what they call themselves mermaids, correct?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, but they're not, they don't have.
Right.
I had to make really clear when I was like, we're in the very beginning, like, she has feet. She has
Yes.
feet.
Yeah. Yes.
We had actually talked about that. We're like, okay, I was expecting like flippers.
Yeah. I mean, the cover does claim she's got legs.
She's got legs.
But yeah.
So this is would you say it's middle grade or young adult?
It's young adult.
Young adult? Okay.
She's 15.
Mhm.
I didn't want to have a lot of profanity and sex in
Mhm.
it. I
Oh,
just,
no.
And
Yeah.
whenever
but
I was reading it, I had been like, okay, I would let my
Hmm.
kids are tomorrow,
Older.
my daughter will be 15 and my son will be 16. But I was like, I feel like I would have let them read this
Yeah.
in middle school. There's a couple of things that I'm like, okay,
A
there's,
little,
a little
maybe talk
romance,
about, yeah,
but it
but
doesn't
not
go in
bad.
depth. Like
Right.
I would feel comfortable letting a middle
oh,
schooler read
Yeah.
that.
Like the romance was sweet. Like it was
Yes.
sweet and innocent. And I love that. I love that for her. But yeah, I know it. I have to tell you, it's so funny because I don't usually mark books, but I was having fun were some of the things that you were going with the like, I don't even know what the right word is, the like aquatic themes.
Mhm.
So like when it says, so we weren't on anybody's sonar instead of radar. Like I loved that. And then I marked a few of those. And then unmoored instead of unhinged. Like I
Mhm.
loved that. I thought that was so fun. And let's see here. Where does that one say? You're amphibious and let's see here. You can swim in either world. Like I love all those things. Like they're so fun. Wait, I got one more too that I marked apparently. What are you, something like you have sand. And she's like, what are you
I
talking
didn't even
about?
think of that. I think that one was
And then
subconscious.
like grit, he's like grit,
Mhm.
spunk, spine. And I just loved it. I thought
Mhm.
it was so perfectly done. Like they were subtle. Like I think if you weren't paying that close attention, you might not notice it. But those things jumped out to me. And I just thought they were so fun throughout.
I just want to say, I love it when somebody reads carefully like that. I just thank you so much. That makes
Yeah.
me feel
Well,
so,
the
'cause
details.
I do this, I would do this if nobody read it,
Hmm.
but it's just so great when somebody reads carefully enough to get, to
Hmm.
see what I've put in. So thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Of course. No, I got excited. I was like, oh, I love this. Like, I love that type of stuff. So, yeah, I thought it was fun. But yeah.
And so you've written several books, first of all. Is it 14? 15?
This is my 15th book and my
14th.
12th novel. Yeah, I have two
Oh,
Wow.
fiction.
cool.
And I was looking through some of your past books, and this is the first dystopian that I noticed.
Yeah, there is one, my fourth dragon book. I did
Mhm.
three medieval dragon books, and then, I got a wild hair and wrote one in the near future. And my editor called it a mild dystopia. So it's, things that are happening now are just a little bit further along, but not
Hmm.
all that much, so,
A
and that
mild
was
dystopia sounds like a medical condition. I've got a case of mild
maybe we can fix
dystopia.
that So yeah, anyway, that was Ancient, Strange, and Lovely. But yeah, this is my first real crack at science fiction, which is another reason why it took me so long,
Mhm.
because I just, it's not my familiar world, I'm real familiar with fantasy and historical fiction. That's why I'm so glad those books came out, explaining it in lay
Yeah.
terms.
No,
Sometimes you
that
need
is good.
that.
I mean, we wouldn't know if you were wrong. Like, I wouldn't know. Like, you wrote it, like, it was like, okay, this all makes sense. Okay, I'm following. And you wrote it in a way that it was easy to understand.
Oh,
And
good.
it was so
Mhm.
interesting just to see like the little things that like she was learning about the people that were not part of her pod
Mhm.
as she went, and like Emerson for example, like she knew something was different but it took her a bit to kind of figure out more and more, and I loved that about, and then all the like I love that the boutique mods and things like
Mhm.
that, and just to see the diversity and to see how some people could kind of hide theirs and how even she tried to hide hers, like when she went to court, like let's wear a
Mhm.
scarf, and then I'm just fascinated, which I don't want to give spoilers away, but when she found out about how her parents found out, I
Mhm.
got the idea to mod her when about the Japanese women
Mhm.
with the large lung capacity. Like now I'm like, I want their story now. So you can
I
write
had
me a
actually
book about
read
that.
something about them previously, and I was like, "Ooh,
Really?
I remember reading
I
about this."
hadn't.
They blew my
Mhm.
mind when I read about them. And I tell you what, if I were Japanese or had any Japanese heritage whatsoever, I would have a draft of a novel about them,
Awesome.
because I really wanted
Yeah.
Then I thought, well, that's not for me. But turns out that there's a group of Korean women also who do this, and they've done some. This was in my newsfeed just recently. It was on the Shortwave podcast. I don't know if you've seen that, but anyway, it was about the Korean women, and they found some genetic differences that over time, there's been a selection. They're in a small island, and there's been a selection for genetic characteristics that make it easier for them to be able to do that. And apparently there's some Indonesian divers that are, again, I'm not sure this is the mother-daughter thing, which I love, but their spleens are somehow they have evolved to support a long holding of breath.
Wow.
Those guys just knock me out. But
It's
but that's
amazing.
not that's not CRISPR. That's just
That's
evolution, really.
but that I mean, that's still so cool. And I love that their inspiration came from a very pure place. And it wasn't, and obviously we didn't know that they didn't know that gills were going to be part of it, but just seeing that and thinking, because they are in the ocean all the time, and what an advantage that would be for their child, they knew she was going to be in the water with them and everything. And so
And I think
I
it's
just love
important
that.
to also say that our female main character in Sea Change, she is 15, you said. She's part of this mermaid community. She's been separated from her family almost by like a child welfare system. They put all of the mer people together, and they have a parental type figure, Constance, who's kind of overseeing everything and taking care of them and
And
helping them
she is
be
not
independent.
one of them. She is
She is
a
not.
normal.
Yes,
Yes.
she is a normal. And then something happens. They think that there's going to be a change with one of the other people they live on a ship. And so they are worried that they're basically going to be waterbound. So then a group of doctors comes in and says, hey, we can fix this. And then Turtle has to make the decision if she wants to give up her identity as a mer person, or if she wants to go join the normals and live amongst them again, and if that's something that she wants to do.
Right.
So I think having that explanation a little bit helps
Oh, to help our people that are listening. Yes,
listening if they haven't read
that's
it.
true.
So
That's true. Yeah.
it helps a little bit just kind of know what's happening in this book. And I thought that there was like some really good points, because you're having this group of people that they've been kind of forced to live together. They've been cut off from the normals. They're shunned a little bit, but it was really interesting because none of these people chose this. This is how they were born. Their parents had chosen this, and they had chosen, the parents had not used like a regular doctor for these modifications. They'd used a biohacker. So
Right.
kind of like on the offside, probably because it's cheaper. I mean, you think about medical treatment and stuff, but
Well, and in the case of Turtle's parents, and again, I can't remember what all I put in the book and how much is still in my head, but Turtle's parents were getting older. They had two other daughters, and they were getting older, and they were thinking it's going to be too late. By the time it becomes legal, it'll be too late. So we'll just jump the gun, get a little lung capacity. It'll be great, but then, and that is one of the sort of dangers of this technology that apparently, and this is from reading those books that explain it to people like me, apparently it's pretty easy to do. It's not like, I grew up in the nuclear age when we had drop drills at school, and we would have to dive under our desk and cover our heads and necks like that was going to help with a nuclear
right.
bomb.
Right.
But I think if somebody would have asked me when I was 15, do you think somebody would have set off, a major nuclear blast against some other country by now? I think I would have said, oh, of course they would. We can't hold back. But we have somehow by some miracle, but also because it's really hard to make a nuclear bomb. This is easier. And you could have people who weren't ethical scientists who were maybe dabbling. I don't know how good they'd have to be in terms of scientific ability to do it, but it's not like making a nuclear bomb. And so that's one of the problems with it, is that you could have people in there who are not bound by the community standards doing it. And also, what are the community standards? You know, in China, they might be one thing, here they might be another thing. And if that happened, wouldn't they do here? Wouldn't they say, well, it's going to happen. We have to keep up. You know, so that's one of the dangers.
Yeah, definitely.
Very interesting. So Turtle's parents, they're divers, and they go out and they scavenge wrecks and different things. And I was like, I kind of felt for her, because I was like, what if they genetically modified her and then it turned out she hated the ocean? I was thinking about that. I was like, man, that's taking a gamble, because then you're like, I
Yeah.
hope my kid likes this, because
Right.
thankfully Turtle did. Turtle liked the ocean. She liked, having the gills. Maybe not having the gills so much, but she liked the ability that she
Yeah.
had.
Yeah.
Or at least she seemed to. So that was good.
Well, and so what I found was interesting, because Abby's the middle sister, right?
Yes.
Because Grace is the oldest. Abby, like, we get like that story of when she and her dad, when Turtle and her father come resurface, and Abby is pitching this fit with their mom. And then we know that there's some resentment clearly in some capacity, from Abby to Turtle. And it makes me wonder, I know she's the middle child. And I mean, I have some friends that are middle children. It's almost like that. Like, well, we've got this oldest star who's just awesome. Then we've got my little sister who's extra special. And then all this stuff happened to their family, and she probably blames her a little bit. But I thought that was interesting, because clearly she was jealous and felt like Turtle got this better
Ability.
gig. But in some ways she did, but in other ways she didn't, because she got completely separated from them for so long.
Yeah. Yeah. It turned out to be
Not quite what.
probably nobody would have chosen that if they'd known everything that was
Yeah.
going to happen. Yeah. So,
Exactly.
that's, again, the other side of the technology that can bring so much good. So I try not to say, oh, it's good or it's bad, but to say, I guess if there was anything communicated about it, like, just be really, really careful.
Well, no, and I think that makes sense. And so I think about, okay, spoiler alert, a character. Well, actually, there's two characters that need less sleep. And
Yes.
seeing a newborn in that sense, I'm like, oh, that was a horrible mistake. Like, I had the kid that required less sleep and had her days and nights confused and had colic. So I'm like, oh my gosh.
I had the same child.
Why
Like,
would
she
anyone
was-
choose this?
Like, she was the second child. If she had been first, she might have been an only child. Like,
I
there
had
might
an
not.
only child.
So see, so I'm like, when I mean, we knew something was going to happen, because there were like the hints, and so did Turtle. Turtle's like, okay, something's not right here. But oh my goodness, I was just like, oh, what a nightmare. Like, and I think too, getting to hear, Emerson's side of that, to see where he was able to share his perspective of having lived with that. But then also, it seems like that maybe something was better, because she did. I mean, if she was a baby, but like, it looked like she could zone out a little bit,
Yeah.
But
and Emerson
yeah.
had one of my favorite lines, and it kind of was a good sum up for the book. Basically, it was him talking about the person that had genetically modified him. And he says, though his idea of better and my idea of better turned out to be two different things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so that's basically everyone in this book. They think they're doing something to better their children or to better society. And maybe their idea of better and their kids' idea of better, or society's idea of better, are two different things. Maybe we don't need to be doing some of this.
Yeah.
So I did love that you showed that dichotomy of there's good and there's bad. It's not all one or the other. And I think that's real.
Yeah. Yeah, I like to do that.
So you started writing, you said, the medieval dragon books. What led you down that path to begin with? What made you become a writer?
Well, partly my maiden name. So in third grade, our teacher was talking about a famous author named Mark Twain. whose real name was Samuel Clemens, and he had a daughter named Susan. Clemens, that was my maiden name. So I thought, oh, I'm going to be an
It's a
author.
sign.
So, yeah.
Destined.
But third grade was about the time when, I could read in first grade, but third grade was the time when I could read and forget that I was reading. I could just dive into a book and just live there. And I loved that. And third, fourth, and fifth grade, our teachers read to us after lunch. And I just fell in love with some of those books that they read. And it just really got me. And so I just, that's what I always wanted to do. And I never let that go. I mean, I had a couple other fantasies, but they were minor fantasies. The writing thing doesn't work out. I'll become a June Taylor dancer, The writing thing doesn't, I'll be a daredevil pilot, but
Wow.
but the but the writing thing was the thing. And so I studied English in school, and then when I got out, um I realized I had to actually make some money, which is hard to do with your first novel. You never know if you'll get any money from when you start writing a novel. So I finally got a job as an advertising copywriter, and then I started writing articles, magazine articles. And then when my daughter was born, and I always wanted to be a novelist, but I'd become more and more sort of afraid of it, more and more thinking, oh, well, that's really hard. Maybe you my daughter, I took her to the library, of course, very young. And there was a librarian there who, after she recommended books for my daughter, which were picture books, and then I told her I was, I'd always loved children's literature and I was a writer. She took me around the library and showed me some of her favorite books. And most of these books were things that were written after I would have been introduced to them as a child. I was too old for that, but before I started writing, and I started reading some of these things, but they just knocked me out. They just completely knocked me out. I don't know if you know Catherine Patterson, her work. She did write A Bridge to Terabithia, and
Okay, I know that
Yes.
book.
a bunch of other really.
But you haven't read it, have you, Leyna?
I haven't. I've
I
seen
know.
part of the movie, I think.
I'm
I
like,
think
she
that's
has
it.
to read this book. Like, I read it as a kid and then I read it as an adult, and it's just magical.
It really
You will
is.
cry, but it's magical. It's worth it.
Everything else that she's written it's just as good. I mean,
That's awesome.
I think she's still writing too. And I've met her. She's
That's so
she's number
cool.
one. She is number one. And but then Ursula Le Guin's the Earthsea stories, starting with The Wizard of Earthsea, was the first book that I read with a wizard school.
Oh.
It
I
was
haven't heard of that
fantastic.
one either. I'm like, hey, we're getting
No,
some
I've heard. Okay,
new
you want
books.
to know how Ursula Le Guin, I know from the Jane Austen book club movie, because that's what the guy in it is like trying to get one of the other characters to read those. He's reading Jane Austen books. He's like, well, why don't you read some of these books too? So anyway, it's fun. Yeah. So I know her name.
I love them both. Well, but yeah. So anyway, these are things that the librarian showed me, and I read them, and I thought, I know that there's some authors who will read published books and they'll think, I could do better than that. It was the opposite with me. I read these, and I'm like, if I could only someday write something half as good as any of these, I would feel like I had lived a valuable life. It just struck me so hard. So anyway, that's where it started. And I just started writing my first book for kids right away. Well, I wrote some horrible picture books first, but then I got started on the novels, which is really, I think, I think
Your
that's what
Sweet
passion.
spot.
I should be
Yeah.
doing.
Very
I
cool.
love that the librarian helped you like find kind of your voice a little bit with the writing and guided you to that genre to start
I
with.
think I was thinking about that when you had said you were going to ask me about this, and I think I'm going to try to find her and thank her, because I don't know if she realizes what an impact she made on, the direction that your writing passion took. So anyway,
That's really cool.
It is
I
one of those
love
things.
that.
I remember my librarian from when I was a little kid. We lived on an Air Force base, and it was the same lady for the whole time that I lived there. And I think about her because she was always so nice and she would help you find whatever. And I think about her and I'm like, she just really helped foster that love for reading.
Yeah.
And I do
See,
wonder if she's still there.
I had mean librarians that like basically didn't they
Shush
like
you.
I like my elementary school one, I remember like she was real snarky and was like careful with the books. And it's like I am not going to mess up a book. Like I love books, you know? And then I don't remember middle school, but high school I spent a lot of time in the library. I feel like the librarian just ignored us, like sat at the desk and just hoped that we were on fine. But I will say, working in different schools, I have loved the librarians that I have worked with at each of the schools. Like some of the greatest people, and even going into my new school, because I'm changing schools, school districts, and I'm helping to open a brand new school. And I haven't met the librarian, but I met one of the librarian aides, and I swear we're besties now. And we were already like, we're going to make a book club for the school. And yeah, like we're so excited. But yeah, I've been lucky. So I know all my students have had really good librarians because I know them and I've seen them with kids too, not just nice to the adults, you know, like
Yeah.
nice to the kids too. But yeah, no, I
Makes a
have ones
difference.
that I don't think, I think they didn't like kids. Like they liked being and that's like, why are you at a school?
That's a tragedy.
But I did have a mom. My mom is why I love reading. Like so I was a competitive ice skater for a decade of my life. And so we had a routine. I would skate early in the morning on Saturdays, and then we'd do our tour of libraries, half price books, maybe book stop, which no longer exists. And so we would do that. That was like our Saturday morning routine after skating. We would go look at books, buy books. And so she's the reason. And that I love reading.
Got
And
into it.
I went to like in the Dallas Richardson area, I probably went to 10 different libraries. Like I can picture so many different ones. So
Wow.
I'm glad y'all had good ones.
Well, that is wonderful. I'm sorry about those cranky librarians.
And Susan, you're also in Texas.
I am in Texas. You're both in Texas?
We're in McKinney, so north of Dallas. We're like the suburbs.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sort of new to Texas.
Okay.
I fell in love with a Texan 10 years ago and got married and moved from Oregon.
Okay.
Oh, wow. So, I mean, I feel like every picture I've seen of Oregon is so beautiful, and
It
people always
is.
talk about how amazing it is up there. So, comparatively, weather-wise, are you surviving Texas weather? Because I hear Oregon weather is just beautiful.
Well, I will say, that Oregon, if you like a lot of sunshine, you've got a big adjustment to make. If you go there in August or September, you'll be very happy. So it did take me a while, having lived other places when I moved to Oregon, but that was a long, long time ago. And and I kept waiting for the sun to come out. I thought when the sun comes out, my mood will improve. And then after a while, you're like, no, you can't
This
live
is
like
just the
that.
way it is.
So when I moved to Texas, I'm like, what's that? And
Oh my gosh, that's so
I
funny.
got so used to rainy days. And so when we've had a lot of rain lately, and I love the rain. No, look, you're complaining.
No, I love the rain. We've just had a lot of like, we're going to have a tornado or major
Yes.
hail. So it's like stressful rain. And thankfully,
Stress
aside
rain.
from like one storm that was kind of bad, we've been lucky. Like I feel like Leyna and I and us in McKinney, like it either goes just north of us or just south of us. And we've kind of
lucked
been
out.
lucky this time. But we did have a tornado last year, like go just like really like you could see it from my backyard. I did not go see it. Someone else did. But you could see it when the lightning hit, but it was north of my neighborhood. But the north end of my neighborhood had trees down and everything. But yeah, other than that, this year we've been lucky, but they keep scaring us. So then it's like, and then the sirens go off for hail. I'm like, don't do that unless it's a tornado.
We need a different siren. We
We
need a
do.
tornado siren and a hail siren.
Don't wake me up at midnight for hail. Like, I mean, for real. But
And
yeah.
so this book also dealt with climate change.
It did.
And because it was set in Texas, and when I think of Texas and climate change, I tend to think of, okay, it's going to get really hot, or it's going to, like how we've had the last couple of winters where snowpocalypse happened. I think of those extremes, and this was more of the sea line was coming up and encroaching on land, and you're losing land, and people are being forced out of their homes because they're going underwater, and that's your underwater town. But it was a different way to look at climate change in Texas, which I thought was really intriguing.
Well, it's Spoonville Island is based, you could probably tell, on Galveston.
Okay.
And
Okay, that makes
Galveston,
sense.
I was going to ask you if that was a real island. I was like, is that a real island that I just don't know about?
well, I wanted to be able to change what I had to change,
Mhm.
so it couldn't be exactly Galveston, but it's really Galveston in my head. And Galveston, as it turns out, is one of the places on the planet that's the most threatened by sea level rise. And it has to do with a glacier way down south of here, which, due to the weird currents, that as that glacier melts, the water will come into the Gulf of Mexico. And so that sort of fluky reason is why Galveston is really in trouble. And they are, to their credit, they have just approved an enormous program to help to mitigate sea level rise in the future. But yeah,
I did not
it's
know that.
uniquely vulnerable down there.
Well,
I
so,
knew
and
that it
that's,
was vulnerable because they had the hurricane 100 or so years ago, and that's why they built the seawall. And I mean, it's a
Yeah.
tourist destination for us.
Yeah.
And let's go to the seawall. But it serves a purpose, a very significant purpose.
Yeah.
one, it's,
Yeah, they raised the block down a couple of blocks. So yeah.
so what's interesting to me, so I've lived in Texas my entire life. And I mean, I obviously, like, it's hotter now, but I mean, it still was hot, I think, when we were little, but like we spent so much time outside in the summer, and I do not remember it getting as hot. Like, yes, it was hot, but we could like run around and do stuff. We could play sports, and people weren't passing out and having, like, kids weren't having heat exhaustion. And by the way, we were not drinking much water, let's be honest. And plus, growing up, like, the amount of snow and ice that we've had has gotten more and more as an adult, because I'm telling you, growing up, every year we'd have like one day where there was ice, but it was usually melted by lunchtime. And so every school year we'd have like one day that we'd get off, and it would be exactly one, and then it was totally fine. But then as an adult, there have been so many multiple day things since, I can tell you when, 2011 was the
Yeah.
first time where I was shocked, where they started calling off school the afternoon before, because they're like, it's a block of ice. All the roads are a block of ice. We haven't gone above freezing. And then that's happened so many times
Right.
since. And that's just been what, 15, 14 years. And it's just crazy. And don't get me wrong, I love, at that time of year, I'm like, okay, yes, I'll take some days off, please.
As a
But
teacher, I'm sure that you're just like,
yeah.
yes.
And with my kids being old, and with my kids being older, when they're
Yes,
little,
yes.
and they require more attention, it's not exactly relaxing. It's, you have to go out in the cold with. But yeah, it's crazy because we would have killed for that as kids. And we never got, I think we got snow like twice in my life. It was always ice otherwise. But now we've had snow.
Yeah, it's scary. So,
It
It's
is.
definitely, this book had a lot of stuff to think about, and the dystopian world that they were in. What was it like to create that world? Did it come to you all at once? Was it like little bit by little bit, or how did that evolve?
I hadn't intended to do the global warming so much, but since I was gonna have it set on the Texas coast, I felt like I really had to. That had to be an important element of it. And so I did do some research about what places are doing to mitigate global warming, and what are some of the plans and proposals that people have. Mainly I have the pumps and things like that, pumps and walls mainly. But because I was doing the Little Mermaid, sort of, and because I wanted it underwater, I invented this thing. I don't know if they would do it anywhere else, but where they had to sacrifice one part of the island for other parts of the island. I'm thinking, how can I get the water deep enough? That, well,
Mhm.
they're going to have to build walls and pump water out of one place and into another place. So anyway, that's sort of built up sort of gradually over time.
Mhm.
I thought it was a
Love
really
it.
cool world. Well, not cool. Like I wouldn't want to
Like
live there, but
interesting world, an interesting
interesting to
world.
read about. Yeah. And kind of be immersed into it and see how, Turtle's sister is older and she's struggling to make ends meet. And it's okay, you're living in this town where I'm sure housing had to be astronomical just because the housing market is shrinking because other parts are getting flooded and this is where you've lived your whole life. Like, how do you just up and leave? And leaving isn't cheap either. So there was all these different components to it and seeing that struggle, but not having it explicitly like laid out. I
Yeah,
really enjoyed
because they
that.
talked about how the wealthy could leave, and that's where I feel like we saw with Sophia, that was her plan. But I love how she turned around because that's the one that had the big house,
The
right?
big
That was,
house. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. So Sophia, I love how she kind of like just meeting both Grace and Turtle, and then Turtle coming to her, just how her whole
World.
plan shifted. Because I mean, she really was just kind of doing, well, what else am I going to do? I have this big house, and I just love how they kind of gave her a purpose when she like her kids were gone, all that stuff. And I loved that it kind of shifted that and showed that while we heard about all these wealthy people, the people that had money left, they fled this island. But then we have this other one that is using her resources to help the people in her community and especially the people that are rejected predominantly. I just love that. I thought that was great.
Yeah, thank you. That was, I didn't intend that, but I mean, I didn't intend to. I mean, that's what the book says. Yeah, that happened from the beginning, but Sophia just sort of caught me for some reason. I wound up spending a lot of time with Sophia and thinking about Sophia, and so when it came, and I didn't know that she'd have another, that she would link back into the story in some way. One thing I'm always looking for is especially if a character kind of interests me more than I thought she would. And she seemed like she might be a throwaway character, like just a way to get that bassinet, which I changed to something else, a bassinet. Anyway, I forget what I changed it to.
Yeah,
Bassinet.
A crib. It was a
like
crib.
a crib
Yeah,
on wheels. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I guess bassinets are dangerous now. So somebody pointed that out at the publisher and they're like, oh, shouldn't be a bassinet. I'm like, all right,
Okay.
there's a
I'm like, my
bassinet.
kids had a bassinet.
Yeah, we had a bassinet, so
Anyway, but when I found a way to hook up Sophia into the story later, I thought, oh, that's what I want to do. And I hook her up with people that she's totally unlike. And then I have a really dear friend she's a writer and she's not a science fiction writer, a reader even. And she was like, when are you going to be done with that book? I'll be glad when I see your next book, Susan. But she did say, I want to be Sophia.
Mhm.
I know.
She's the
I loved
helper.
her.
Like, look for the helpers. She's the helper.
Yes.
She's the one that maybe didn't know that she could help. And then when it was
Mhm.
identified, she
Hmm.
did it. She jumped in
Yeah, it
there.
was fun to have that sort of open up for me.
I know. I love that. And I love that with Jasmine too, because when they were asking her to find a specific doctor, and she reached out to her because she had to think about like how did she treat me when she met me. She could see that I had scars, that had been, and she knew probably from her sister telling her and everything, and just to use that to read the vibe that she's probably a safe person. And I loved it how that played out too, and all the other stuff that I won't say, but I thought it was, I mean, it's kind of like sometimes in the world, especially for people that have been alienated or persecuted, I can only imagine, because I have not experienced that, I can only imagine how hard that must be. And I loved that reminder that there are good people. I mean, that's the type of people I feel like we try to be, is be the shelter, be the safe person. Especially as a teacher, I try to be the safe person for my students. And I loved seeing that I don't even know how to explain it, like just how there were these very intentionally written and just caring people that were able to take care, to have such a positive part in the book. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, thank you. I love that. Thank you very much.
All right, so you're a reader. What do you like to read? Like, what genres are your favorites? I mean, I'm guessing science fiction, maybe.
I don't read that much science
Okay.
fiction. So
Okay.
this was, I had that was part of why this idea
Mhm.
scared me, is I thought, yeah, is this really your genre? But it's like, no, I have to read this. But I did write down a couple of science fiction things that I have read, and like, oh, Ender's Game, Orson Scott Card. Have you read that?
I haven't, but my son loved it.
Same.
It's astounding. And in today's world, it is so prescient. And then I taught at Vermont College with Tobin Anderson, and he wrote a book called Feed, which is also prescient, and it's science fiction. It astounds me, that book. And it was a number of years ago, but yeah. So I have read some science fiction that I really, really love, but it's not where I gravitate. I gravitate toward, I don't know, a lot of historical fiction and uh, let's see, I wrote down some, I told you before my
Oh my no. You asked me like, what have you read lately? And all
I'm
of a
like,
sudden
I
I've
don't know.
forgotten like
yeah,
any books that I've read this year. Like,
Trust me, we
you
have
read a
notes
book
too.
today and you're like, I can't think of a single one. Yeah, but that's
mhm.
but All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr.
That
So
was a good
Such a
one.
good
That
book.
was a very
I
Yes.
good
ran
book.
into him in a bookstore at Powell's when
Did you
with his
really?
with his previous book, which was a memoir that he
Oh.
wrote while he was blocked. I think he was blocked on, it must have been All the Light We Cannot See. And I took my mom, who has since passed away. But anyway, there was like nobody there.
And now
I
he's hugely famous.
I know now he would just, his whole cities line
Mhm.
up to hear him read. But he was just a very sweet and likable man. And so I was so thrilled when he came out with this amazing book.
It was an amazing book.
Oh,
Anyway,
so
that
good.
that book was right up my alley. I recently read Transatlantic by Colin McCann, and I loved that book too. It has a wonderful, in my next book will have something to do with early aviation, and it has just an amazing scene of two of the early aviators flying across the Atlantic. It was just astounding. And then
Very
a book
cool.
called Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead, which also is it's partly about early aviation. So I love that too.
So you mentioned your next book's going to have something to do with that. When can we expect that book?
But it's going to take me forever to nail it down.
That's so fun to read the books to kind of prepare you for that's so fun.
Do you
I love
typically
it.
do that? Read books in the genre, or I guess not the genre, but in kind of the same space as what your next book is going to be
Yeah.
about?
So I should also mention a book that I read, sort of in this way. It wasn't direct research, but it was indirect research. And I think I found it about the ama, the Japanese ama in this
Mhm.
book. And that is Tides by Jonathan White. And I bought the hardcover book and then I bought the audio book and I have listened to the audiobook over and over. He just tells you everything about it. It's just fascinating how many he traveled the world to write. I mean, you think, how could he have put in so much into one book? All this research. Did he ever get his money out of this? All the research he did?
Hey, he had fun. If you travel the world, you're going to have a good time.
Yeah,
Yes, yes.
clearly he did.
Maybe he
So
could write it all off.
yeah.
That was why he wrote the book.
Yeah, I bet he could. There you go. Maybe he was writing off stuff he would have done anyway. But and then I'm also reading just to calm me down when I'm just too hyper to sleep, just to calm me down. These books I absolutely love, which I know you read, is the Alexander McCall Smith #1 Ladies Detective Agency books.
Okay,
Those
I
I
have
have not read
not
them.
read those.
uh,
My mother-in-law gave my daughter the whole series. So I'm like, we have them. I just haven't read them.
I feel like maybe our friend Emily might have read them. Or it
'Cause
was my mom. I don't know. I get confused. People tell me.
there's several of them, right? It's
Yeah,
like,
it's a bunch.
yeah.
they're not, it's not like reading Anthony Doerr, but I will tell you that they just somehow strike me in the heart.
That's
And
good.
anyway, they're
I love
lovely,
that.
lovely books.
So do you prefer like hardbacks, paperbacks, ebooks, audiobooks, or combination?
Well, the sad thing now is that paperbacks have become almost impossible to read for me lately. The type has just shrunk and shrunk and shrunk, and I'm sure it has more to do with this than with the actual type. But
Same.
so I'm glad there are audiobooks. I'm
Mhm.
very glad about that, and or not
Mhm.
audiobooks and also Kindle.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can make the
Yes.
type any size I want, and it lights up at night so my husband can
Mhm.
sleep and I can read, and I'm very happy. Although sometimes I wanna flip the pages back.
Mhm.
I
I know.
wanna I wanna stick my fingers in several places so I can go look at things. But
Yeah,
anyway, it's enough to
I get
be
that.
able to read them. So
Yeah.
I get you.
I do a lot of audiobooks, but this year my goal was to read more physical books. So I set like a small goal to read 10, and I've read I've read almost all of them, I think, all 10, but
which
having
ones?
the physical copy, it's so different. It's such a different experience, and it makes you sit down and you slow down and you're just
Mhm.
present in the moment.
Well, and then
And
then you can do this in the
yep.
middle. Like I'm like, I just need a hit. I just need a little hit of the pages and the ink. I do. If I have a physical book, I'm like constantly smelling it.
I'm like, I need to smell it now.
It, yeah, because
It
you don't
does.
do physical as much.
It's
I know. Do you
it's
smell it?
probably the paper and the glue.
And the
Yeah.
ink, oh, it's intoxicating.
There is something about walking into, I especially like old bookstores.
Oh,
Whenever you
yeah.
walk in and they have that, they smell like books should
Books,
smell.
yeah,
Right.
they do.
And the other
Yeah.
thing about a physical book is that, you open, it's those first pages, they're very carefully laid out.
Mhm.
And there's all kinds of interesting information in those first pages. Whereas
Hmm.
you buy a Kindle book and you hit beginning and you're like on the chapter one, you're like, sometimes they shoot you right past the dedication and
Hmm.
any inscriptions or quotations that they have. You're like, wait, I need
I
to
need the
start.
whole thing.
Yes.
And the physical book reminds you of the care that
Mhm.
goes into the books, not by the author, but by the people who are making the book,
Hmm.
by the typesetter and by the design,
Yeah.
by the editor.
And speaking of that, you have a dedication in your book for Kelly, who pointed me in the direction of genetics and said, it's good to try hard things.
I
I'm
love
like, I
that.
love that. And that sounds exactly what you did. You went out and you did something new and you conquered it. You wrote it. It's awesome.
Mhm. Is
Yeah,
that
And
your
then,
daughter?
that is my daughter. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
aw.
I had to keep telling myself, it's good to try hard things.
It's a fun thing to have that turnaround whenever you're telling your kids for so long, you can do hard things, you can do
Mhm.
this, it's okay. And then now she's telling you that. Like
Yeah, it's
that's
I
gotta
love
feel
it.
pretty nice.
Yeah. Well, she's done Ironman, ultra marathons.
So has Leyna. She's an Iron Man.
I have the tattoo and everything.
Really? Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
Wow. Well, see, there's a hard thing. I mean, that's a
Right.
crazy hard thing.
Yeah,
So,
I know. So impressive.
yeah. So
Very
my
cool.
daughter kind of does that, and I am inspired. I am inspired by that.
That's awesome.
Anyway.
I love that. I love that. No, and I love too, like we were talking about how like it is young adult and it's a safe book to
Mhm.
recommend because I do have an Instagram that my students follow me on and I've been recommending a book a week. And so I'm excited because this is one I feel like I can recommend it and parents aren't going to get mad. Like you always worry. Like I'm like, I can't recommend a Stephen King book because Stephen King, even if it's an interesting story, he always puts something wildly, crazily
Inappropriate.
yes, inappropriate that I wouldn't even want my students to know I read it. Like you can, you know what I'm saying? Like you just can't. And
Yeah.
so I've been looking at like all the my white going around my house, like what YA books do I have that I can recommend? And then remember, was there anything in it? Was there anything in it? Okay. And then I also, so I do have access, which I think this is really cool. The I guess the district library, they have an e-library. And so you can go in and look. And so I can search and be like, hey, is that book in there? And they
No.
have stuff that I'm like, do they know that book's in there? Because people get up in arms these days about books. And I've read that book and I know that book is not as clean as Anyway, it doesn't matter. I mean, it might. But I love that this one, I can safely be like, you guys need to get this book and read it. And I'm going to totally do that. So,
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad.
yeah, me too. I'm excited.
And what's the best way for people to find your books? Do they go on like major booksellers, Amazon, your website?
Yeah, well, my website will say, just about everything that I've that I've written.
Mhm.
And Amazon is great. I love independent booksellers also, so I would encourage them to go there.
Awesome.
So
We're a fan too.
it's like that. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. All right.
I guess it's time to say goodbye
Say
to
goodbye.
Susan. We've enjoyed having you on here. It's been a pleasure to talk with you
It
and to
has.
learn more about, I mean, this is just, it's all fascinating stuff to me
Mm-hmm.
to learn
Yeah.
more about it. And I hope everyone goes out and reads Sea Change and you can see what happens with Turtle
Yes.
and find out, kind of her story and how her world turns out. I don't want to give anything away.
Nope. Nope. You got to go read it. So.
You got to go read it.
All right. Well,
All
I
right.
guess of course. And until next time, guys, I guess we'll say bye.
Bye.
Bye. So thank you for listening to More Than a Book Club podcast. We are recorded and produced in McKinney, Texas.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening.